midnight drearies.
Arthur was a mortician who had been in the profession for over 20 years. He had always been fascinated with death and the process of embalming. He prided himself on his work and was considered one of the best in the industry. Fairfield was a small town and he took care of all the business of the dead. However, Arthur had a secret that he kept hidden from everyone. He had fallen in love with a female corpse he was embalming. The young woman had been brought to the funeral home after a tragic accident. Her body was badly damaged, but Arthur saw past the injuries and was struck by her beauty. He checked her toe tag. "Oh my sweet Taylor, if only I had known you in life." He couldn't stop thinking about her and would often spend hours alone with her, working on her body and talking to her as if she was still alive. Arthur's skill was so great that he swapped out her body for another and no one at the viewing even noticed. He had been keeping Taylor in the morgue freezer only through an unlockable swinging door and a few steps away. As the weeks went by, Arthur's obsession with the young woman grew stronger. He started to neglect his work and would spend all his time with her. He even started to dress her in beautiful gowns and would brush her hair until it shone. One stormy night, as Arthur was finishing up his work on the young woman's body, he sensed that something wasn't right. He thought he saw her eyelids twitch, and he felt a faint pulse in her wrist. He couldn't believe it. He had been so caught up in his obsession that he hadn't noticed the signs of life returning to her body. "How is this possible?" he said aloud. Suddenly, Taylor sat up, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "What have you done?" she asked in a raspy, hollow voice. It was like the sound of 1,000 graves opening at once with the cries of the dead rising to heaven, if one believed in such a place. Arthur stumbled back, shocked and terrified. He tried to run, but the now ambulatory young woman chased after him, her movements jerky and unnatural. Arthur ran through the funeral home, knocking over chairs and tables and funeral flower arrangements in his attempt to escape. He burst out through the front doors and ran into the cemetery, the rain pouring down on him in sheets. The ground was slick with mud, and Arthur slipped and fell, his head hitting a gravestone. Taylor caught up with him and loomed over his prone body, her face twisted into a grotesque mask. Arthur tried to crawl away, but she grabbed his ankle and dragged him back towards her. Her grip was icy cold, and Arthur could feel his life slipping away. As he lay dying in the pouring rain, Arthur realized the terrible mistake he had made. His obsession with death had consumed him, and now it had led to his own demise. Taylor, now fully revived, stood over him, her eyes cold and empty. They had switched places, each one crossing the threshold of death's door. Arthur was now on his way out and Taylor had found her way back in. She had no use for the mortician who had dared to love her. She leaned down and whispered in his ear, her voice like ice on his skin, "Death is not something to be loved. It is something to be feared." And with that, she plunged her hand into his chest, tearing out his heart and leaving him to die alone in the rain.